Load shedding and power cuts are killing us all over the place. So if you're someone who's just looking for a way to keep some of their devices charged during a blackout or a power outage, then this giant power bank might just be for you. Hey, what up? It's your boy MobbJustice back again with another video, and for today we do get into a review of the Romoss 40 Plus. It is a giant power bank, and I think it will be a great choice, you know, if you're looking for just something that helps you to keep devices charged during times of load shedding. As always, this video is brought to you by the team over at Lion Media. Head on over to check out some of the crispiest photo, video and audio content. That's www.lionmedia.com. Head on over, check it out and just see what the team can do for you. So backup power is becoming more and more essential in the world that we're living in. In South Africa, where I am, we talk about load shedding, which describes a series of rolling blackouts in different parts of a city or the country that are there to help to conserve energy on the national power grid. And as the Russia-Ukraine war has been waging in Europe, I know that the issue of power instability is also something that is taking hold in that part of the world. So I've decided to start a small series around some of the devices that I'm using when it comes to backup power and trying to keep devices charged during load shedding. So before we get into complex discussions about giant batteries as well as generators, solar power, inverters and the like, a good place to start your backup power journey is just a simple power bank. Anyone who's watched some of my previous videos knows that I always carry a power bank of some sort, usually this one, but when it comes to load shedding, you need something different. So this is the Romoss 40 Plus. It is part of Romoss Zeus series, and it's basically a giant power bank with 40,000 milliamp hours. If you go back a couple of videos, we did one back in the day. I will make sure I link it in the description. You can go back and watch a video that I did as a guide to understanding milliamp hours, power banks, and a general buying guide on that front. So I originally saw this particular power bank on a holiday. We were holidaying with some friends in East Africa a few months ago, and I noticed that one of the other party on the trip was carrying this giant power bank, and I just was very interested, went and did a lot of research and actually came across the pricing and the like. This thing is huge. I will put it next to my usual power bank that I showed at the beginning. When you place them together like this, you do see there is a giant difference. But even then, this isn't even the biggest power bank that Romoss actually produces. They actually have one or two that are bigger than this. The 60 Plus actually offers 60,000 milliamp hours. So obviously having something like this comes with a number of advantages. The first is obviously the size, because it's just a giant power bank, which means that secondly, you can charge multiple devices multiple times. And then that also is helped by the fact that nowadays we have more and more products from your phones, your tablets, but in addition your speakers, lights and the type of thing that are now charging via USB. So it means that something like this becomes even more useful, and that's made even better by USB Type-C, which is now charging even devices such as laptops. We've featured one or two laptops on this platform, such as I think the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Nano, if I remember correctly, that charges via USB Type-C, so you can charge your laptops. I think MacBooks these days they do charge via USB Type-C, so you could realistically in a pinch use something like this to keep your laptop going. And whilst it's big, this is a power bank that is still, quite portable, if you want to take it on holiday, travel, that type of thing. highly recommended. Some stats on this particular power bank, if you do decide to pick one up, with 40,000 milliamp hours, it means you can get a lot out of it. Typical back in the day, you know, if you had one of these, you know, one of the older iPhones, they used to have you know, 2,000 to 3,000 milliamp hour batteries, which means something like that you could take it for about 13 charges, you know, from empty to full. These days a lot of phones are now shipping with 4,000 to 5,000 milliamp hour batteries. S10 Plus from Samsung, this, you know, comes with a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which means you could charge it 10 times. And then, you know, on the upper end, some of the high end phones are coming with 5,000 milliamp hour batteries, which means you could charge that about 8 times. Otherwise, typical iPad, you know, sits at between 8,000 and 10,000, which means you could charge it, you know, 5 charges for some of the smaller devices, or, you know, 4 charges for some of the larger ones. I carry the first generation iPad Pro, and that's a huge 10,000 milliamp hour battery, which means you can charge something like this about 4 times. And as I said, you can now charge MacBooks, you know, using things like your power banks. And I think some of my research shows that the MacBook Air from 2020 has roughly a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, which means you could charge it 8 times. So the one thing I'm realizing I forgot to mention, particularly when it comes to charging some of the higher power devices such as your laptop, is you know, output, and that is particularly, you know, in watts. So for example, you know, MacBooks tend to need between 60 and 100 watts if you're going to be able to charge. Otherwise, the Romoss, for example, you know, sits at around 12 or 18 watts, which means you wouldn't be able to charge, you know, let's say a MacBook with something like that. Big capacity, but in terms of power delivery, you know, it's not enough. So that's always something to consider when you're buying a power bank, particularly for those devices beyond just your smartphones and your tablets. If you do decide to pick something like this up, the unboxing experience is pretty simple. You get you know, some nice white packaging, and then inside you get the unit itself, you know, a little bit of literature in terms of the instruction manuals, and then a simple charging cable. And when it comes to that charging, you can charge this device using micro USB, which is typical for, you know, power banks these days. But with this one, you can also charge it using the USB-C port that's there. Interesting thing about that USB-C port is that it can do power in and it can do power out, which means you can charge the actual power bank, but you can also charge other devices with it. And then because this is a huge battery that you have at the end of the day, it does take some time to fully charge from, you know, 0 to 100%. So I usually leave it overnight to do so. So that's been it for this video. As I said, this has been a great device so far in my experience. I really, you know, recommend something like this, at least as a way to, you know, keep those smaller devices charged during some of those periods of power cuts as well as load shedding. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy something like this, but my tip is that, you know, go out and look at the size of the power bank that you want to buy versus you know, the battery capacity of the devices that you want to keep charged. That will help you to, you know, inform yourself of, you know, what you want to do. As I said, when I decided to buy something like this, you know, you're taking into consideration the typical size of the phone batteries, of the tablet batteries, and saying how many times could you realistically charge your devices and keep them going during a 2, maybe 4 hour bout, you know, of load shedding. So definitely looking to make more such videos in the future. I do believe that there are a number of different devices that I'm using that I want to share out there, you know, maybe help people, you know, as a way to keep their own things going in times of load shedding and or power cuts. So that's been it. You guys can let me know, what are you using when it comes to backup power? How have you been helping yourself, you know, to mitigate these issues of power cuts? You know, do you have a generator? Is it an inverter, solar? Are you using giant power banks? You guys can let us know what you're doing, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Hey, this is Baby G and you're watching the Mob Justice channel. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Live it, love it, like it. This is the Mob Justice TV.
No.